This is SoundNotion, the weekly podcast for new music and music news. I'm Patrick Gulo.
I'm David McDonald.
I'm Nate Blyton.
And I'm Sam Merciers.
And this week we're joined by Lisa Kaplan. She is the pianist of 8th Blackbird. Has been on the show before.
Friend of the show.
Great friend. We love her. Lisa, how you doing?
Hi guys, I'm great. How are you?
I don't know. I don't think we can complain. I guess it's coming down to the holidays here, and everyone's waiting for the year to finish off. But,
Exactly.
One of the reasons that we wanted to have you on the show today was because I personally have noticed that 8th Blackbird has been very pioneering, I think, in taking on so many residencies, visiting so many colleges, working with so many young musicians, and I kind of want to get to know why you guys have done this and any conclusions that you've drawn so far about the next generation of young performers. So, I mean, recently you were at the Miller Theater, I believe, for a full performance, and you also did a residency at the Associated Columbia University. Is that correct?
We did a full day of resident stuff actually at Manhattan School and Manus School, following the performance at Columbia.
Oh, okay.
That performance at Columbia involved we did sort of like a pre-show chat with the general freshman population, but we didn't do anything further that particular day. But yeah, I mean, I think our focus on kind of residency stuff has just developed sort of organically, and has kind of just come out of the thought process of, well, I mean, we love what we do, but we also want to engage young people to kind of take I don't know, like what I would say is sort of our performing aesthetic and kind of high standard that we hold ourselves to performing music, and make, other people want that. The kids that are the future of, music. And so I think in particular the residency that we've been doing at Curtis this past 2.5 years, we'll sort of finish the residency at the end of this coming May. But the residency at Curtis really came out of sort of, well, wanting to have a chance to sort of work with these elite, really capable musicians, and kind of teach them things that they're not necessarily learning.
Which is a problem, I think, in the core curriculum of music conservatories these days.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think, yeah, curriculum. The problem with academia, as we all know, even when it's a small institution, it's very difficult to make change quickly. So, sort of, putting yourself into the curriculum when it's like a 3-year program, or even if it's like a 1-year program, it's hard to make it feel like anything more than ad hoc, which is not to say that you don't end up developing very special relationships with particular students, but I think as a whole it's difficult to kind of make an impact on the overall community. So that's what we were really hoping, over 3 years at Curtis we would be able to do. And obviously that's a school that's very steeped in kind of traditional core values, and it's not that there's anything wrong with those values. Those are great, and teaching somebody how to play their instrument is obviously part of it, but there are a lot of things that are a part of sort of being a successful performer that that they're not seeing, which is things to do with entrepreneurship and curatorship and engagement, like understanding, like sort of relevancy, like why are you playing this piece when 8 million other people have played it? So like what makes it important to you, and how are you expressing that to somebody else so that they should care?
So looking beyond ticket sales, basically.
Yeah, oh totally. I mean, yeah, I mean, well, we're the wrong people to talk to about ticket sales, because of course, that's never Well, I mean, and classical musicians are not paid in a rock band style in which they sort of take part of ticket sales, right? We're paid a fee to show up and play a concert, and we get that fee no matter if, 500 people come or if 5 people come. So, I understand it's a problem, like for presenters, of course. Yeah, but I think you want to try and draw as many people as possible into the concert hall, but getting them there really depends on them understanding like why it is you're doing what you're doing and why they should care about it. And I think that that's something that young people don't really think about. Just not because they're dumb, but just because it's like they haven't. Nobody has kind of pointed that out to them. And I'm not sure anyone pointed it out to me either. I mean, I think it's something that Eighth Blackbird collectively kind of just developed as it has grown. I mean, we're in our 19th season right now.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I just turned 40, and it's like, well, I've been doing this basically, half of my life, which is totally weird to think about.
Right.
Anyway, sorry, I just talked for a long time. I hope that
it's
answers.
good. I think it's interesting because, like you said, we were never asked those kinds of questions when we were in school. Like, why are you playing this and not this other thing? Or why are you, as composers, why are you writing this way? And it's not something that I think we ever thought about. Is there anything that has maybe surprised you that the students you're working with have been interested in or not interested in?
Well, let's see.
You stumped her, Dave.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was making a joke. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, no, I was just gonna say, I think they're sometimes just sort of startled by the kinds of questions we even ask them. Because it's like just not even crossed their minds to sort of think about it. And
well, what kinds of careers do you think that they have in mind but like before you come and talk to them?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them have in mind just that they want to have an orchestral, well, particularly at Curtis, that they're going to have an orchestral career. So, for instance, there's a young woman, an oboist. She's an alumni now of Curtis, but we first met her when she was a student there, and she plays the oboe. And when I first worked with her, which was before the official residency started there, it was about 5 or 6 years ago. And so I remember working with her. I remember her asking me lots of questions, being really enthusiastic. She had gone to Oberlin and was getting like a performance certificate at Curtis. And, so she was very aware of Eighth Blackbird, I think just because she had gone to Oberlin. But a few years later, when the residency kind of started, we did some kind of lecture demonstration for like the bulk of the student body. And she came up to me afterwards and she was like, "Do you remember me?" And I was like, "Yes, of course. Alex, you play the oboe, and she said, "I just have to tell you that you've like changed my life." And I was like, "Oh God, oh no." And she said, "No, I didn't like realize until," she's like, "when you came to Curtis, 3 years ago, and you talked about how there are, there's the possibility to like make your own career path and do something different." She said, I never realized that like I could be in charge and do that. And I always just felt like, well, I have to play the oboe really well, and I have to make reads, and I have to practice my excerpts, and I have to win a job. And so to make a long story shorter, I mean, essentially she started kind of her own ensemble called Ensemble 39, and she, she's incredibly enterprising, and she's done really well for herself, and I think she will continue to do well for herself. And I mean, it's not that she's like, famous yet, but, she's working really hard, and I was just, it made me really, I was like scared that she said that to me, but I was also like really happy that, something that we're demonstrating and talking about is making people rethink like what their choices essentially.
So there was a little bit of like, oh, what God, what have I done? sort of.
Exactly, yeah. I was like, oh my God, oh no. Right, or like people actually take what I say like to heart. I better be careful.
Yeah.
So, um,
Well,
yeah,
Dave,
but I mean,
Go
Dave,
ahead.
I was gonna say, you know what she's instilling in those students, don't you, Dave?
Tell me, Sam.
A
Is it
sense
an
of
A word?
a sense of agency.
I mean, it's true because we go to music school and we're told, you know, you will practice this etude and then come and perform it for me, and then you play in the ensemble, and you're not the leader of the ensemble. There's a guy with a stick that's the leader of the ensemble, and you practice your stuff, and you come to the next lesson, and you do your homework, and you go to the next class, and there's very little opportunity. It's kind of astonishing because we do consider it to be an arts degree, but there's very little creativity involved in most music curricula, I think.
right. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, is like they don't give you the opportunity to sort of be creative on a level like anything other than what pieces you're choosing to play on your program.
Right. To me, it's just a perfect learn by example. You know, you're a hot rod violin player, and you might have a chance of getting an orchestra gig along with the 400 other people who are auditioning for that one position.
Right.
But if you can see an example of another way to go, you know, when I was in school as an undergrad, I got super jazzed when I went and saw the orchestra. But all the problems that are confronting the orchestra, it's pretty hard to imagine how you might help solve those problems to your own benefit as a performer. But if you think about starting your own ensemble, then the problems are only yours to solve, which can be an empowering thing, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the
Yes,
whole idea
absolutely.
of all performers want to be symphony musicians and all composers want to write film music, and we need to be more realistic with all of those students about how unlikely, regardless of how talented they are, even
Right.
how unlikely those things happening are.
And just how many other paths are possible as well.
Exactly.
You know, so many.
So
Yeah. Go on.
you brought up composition, Sam. Now, Lisa, you also work with composers too during these residencies as well, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
What do you bring to the conversation do you kind of point to composers that you guys work with, or that like perhaps the idea of writing specifically for a group, not necessarily just the instrumentation, but getting to know the players of a certain group? Like, what is this conversation that you have with young composers, and how they can make a career composing for a group like yours?
Yeah, I mean, we work with the composers in a lot of different ways depending on the situation. So obviously there's sort of the occasion where the composers write pieces for us to just show up actually in sight read and then kind of like give feedback on that. And so I just look, in the span of 19 years, I'm playing lots of other people's music. You actually learn a lot about composition, even if you've never taken like an actual orchestration class. So I think we just try to share our experience with the composers about how things that they're doing are good, maybe how things can be improved, and then we often suggest things if we hear something that we think is maybe not working, and we try it. We try it in several different ways to show how maybe it could work better. And that's actually, I think, the most valuable experience in terms of the composer just being able to hear the difference and the practicality of, live musicians sitting there and giving examples of different ways that things can be orchestrated and how that sounds like in real, life and not on Sibelius or whatever. So I think that's one thing that's very helpful. And then I think something that we've done a lot at Curtis, and what I just did this past week actually when I was there, all the composers had written pieces, and there was a composer concert. And so, essentially we just went to we helped coach those works. And then it's a little bit about, as a composer, how you interact with an ensemble and what brings the best result. I was thinking about it a lot, actually, because the concert of the student works was really so wonderful. It was maybe one of the best ones I've been to in the past 3 years. And I was thinking about like why is this so why is this so good? Because it's not it's not the works themselves were very different, and I felt like they were performed really well by these kids, but I also feel like and this is something that I think has been a good kind of change that I've seen at Curtis, is that there's more and more sort of desire from the instrumentalists to collaborate with composers themselves. And I think part of that is what we were talking about before, is like, yeah, I mean, you can't have such a narrow view of like what your career path could look like. And so the versatility of just like, working with a live composer, learning how to play new music, they realize that that's actually part of what their path could look like. And so they take the opportunity to do it more, in an academic environment, because I think they're realizing that's something they're going to have to do once they leave. So yeah, I guess, we never tell composers, this is bad, this is great, I mean, we try to work with what we see or what we hear, but it's yeah, I mean, it's hard. Don't you think composition is like such a weird thing to teach also to somebody else?
It can be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too.
Part of it is teaching discipline.
Yeah.
I mean, you end up teaching a lot of the same things that you teach in instrumental lessons. You teach a lot of technique stuff, and you teach a lot of kind of how to teach yourself things.
Right.
But I mean, just like an instrumental lesson, the student has to go and figure a lot of stuff out on their own.
Right.
Yeah.
And some that's what I think the composers are not actually doing enough with live people. Like, they're going to figure it out, and they're they're not actually trying it out on a human. And what I always get on people about is like, look, you can't learn how to play every instrument well, but there are some things that you can learn. You like sit down, you can like most people can sit down at a piano and try something, right? Even if they're not a pianist. And like what I really don't like is like, the person who's written the most ridiculous, like, not idiomatic at all kind of passage on the piano, and they say, well, I know, but I tried it at like half tempo and I could play it, and I'm not a pianist at all. So I figure like you're a real pianist, and like therefore you'll be able to play it like twice as fast as me. it's like that has nothing to do with it. It's like, does it fit in the hand? Like, these crazy jumps, never work. Like 2 clicks on the metronome past what you probably tried it at. And the fact is that you have to just like do your research, and especially when it comes to like an instrument, you can just easily kind of sit down and try. And when you can't, it's like, okay, well, find a friend who plays French horn and be like, does this work? Or ask your violist friend to try the series of harmonics. And it's hard work. I mean, I've been composing a bit more in the past few years and arranging stuff, and I'm incredibly slow, and I just, depend on my colleagues to try things out. And, I want it to be fun to play, and I want it to feel good to the performer. So I definitely approach it from like a performer's standpoint. And I feel like composers need to try to do that. They need to get into the heads more of the performers, because otherwise no one's going to want to play their music necessarily.
Yeah.
Yes. And certainly you want a composer to have their own vision and have the willpower to make that happen, but you have to, if you're concerned at all with getting performances, which we would hope they are, you have to tinge that with reality, and the only way to get a taste of that reality is to, like you said, interact with humans. There is no thing that a composer can do to prove that they have technique in the way that a performer can play their scales and arpeggios and etudes. So like every experience we have like that is sort of a real experience. There's no such thing as like a scale or an arpeggio, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And I think just the practicality of having a smaller ensemble that you encourage people to write for so they can actually hear what happens when humans give it a shot, instead of encouraging them to, as Dave says, fill out the orchestra lottery ticket and take a year and a half doing it and then never hear it performed by anything besides Sibelius.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I asked one of my students to write a piece on paper and not in Sibelius, and not touch Sibelius until he was totally done writing it on paper this semester, and he looked at me like I had just asked him to, start riding his velocipede to school or something, and buy horseshoes for his horses or something. Like, he looked like I was asking him to recreate antiquity.
Nice.
Yeah, not to get too... Go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead, Lisa.
No, I was just going to say, but see, the thing is, I actually think there's something very important in that. And that is to say that it forces you... I actually do everything totally old school and write it out by hand, too, which I know is incredibly inefficient, but I feel like what it gives me is, like, a relationship to, like, the notes that I'm actually writing down and, like, why I'm choosing them and how they sound. Like, it forces me to hear it totally in a different way than if it just plays back in a computer program. And I'm not saying that everyone should write out every single piece, like they shouldn't, but I mean, even I don't know, my friend Nico Muley, like he writes a lot of stuff out by hand, and because I think, everyone has their own reasons, but I think that's something about it, like that tactile kind of relationship is tied to what your oral experience is of choosing those pitches.
Yeah, and not being limited by what's easy to enter into the computer and all those other things that is all the easy traps to fall into when you're writing first in the computer. But so those relationships, it seems like that the students are building, and you're talking about building between people writing music and people playing music, and building that network of artistic community, seems to me to be a pretty important step toward a lot of the entrepreneurism things that you probably talk about in these residencies as well. Can you talk a little bit about the stuff you're doing around entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I have such a problem with that word because I feel like it's so fraught with
it's kind of douchey.
It's
kind of Silicon Valley douchebag.
We've covered the bad points of that word quite a bit, so feel free to use it with the understanding that we and our highly intelligent audience all get it.
Yeah, and it seems to me that it's kind of an artistic thing. Like when you make a work of art, you make a thing and bring it into the world. And to me, entrepreneurship is broader than just business stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we let's footnote that and then continue with the conversation.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, we've been also trying to think of another word that sort of means, encompasses the things that entrepreneurial encompass, but is a different word. And I don't know, we've come up with a few things, but none of them feel exactly right. But we've been using provocateur a little bit, which maybe is equally as douchey. I don't know, but yeah, I mean,
you need to say subsidized provocateur, so it's clear that you're trying to make some money out of it.
Right. No, of course. Yeah, exactly. Well, I think it's just in terms of, again, and this is not like something that 8th Blackbird learned either. I think it's actually good. There are more and more kinds of courses on this in curriculums now, and with sort of technology, at the place where it is, that's all, everything's sort of much easier, just in terms of, you can create your own website, you have all your, SoundCloud files, people can, like, the access component is so much greater than, like, when we were sort of first starting out. But yeah, okay, well, I'll just cite an example of something that happened a few days ago, which was, so we were at Curtis. We did like sort of this collaborative performance with their fellow string quartet in residence, who had organized a big performance of, actually it wasn't huge. It was like maybe 20 people. Performance of In C. And
25th anniversary or something is going on, or some anniversary. 50th, yeah.
50th.
Yeah, 50th. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so So, no, I was quite proud of them. Like what ended up happening was there's a space, of course it's in the basement. There's a space in the basement of the Kimmel Center in Philadelphia, which is where all new music is put, in the basement. And but it's called like the Innovation Hall or Innovation Center or something like that. It's essentially just like a black box theater, very bare, but they can sort of make it be whatever they want. And so we did the performances down there, and everything was sort of set up in like a kind of loungy atmosphere. And this was all taken on by the student quartet. Like they were the ones who sort of made these choices, and we sort of guided and mentored them through the process. But they had, I think, like a clear vision of what they wanted to do, and we kind of just tried to help them execute it. So part of so it was like this kind of loungy atmosphere, and we did performances at like 6:30 and 9:30. So when people started arriving at 6 o'clock, we were all instructed to go out and mingle with the audience. And
We were instructed.
we were instructed by the quartet. Was like, everyone has to do this, and we're like, okay, great. So we're all out there. We're kind of talking to the audience members, and clearly, like, some of the students have no idea like what to do. They're like, it's like they don't, they can't. So one of the students who was playing, a bright percussionist, a bright composer, he's like, Lisa, like, what do I say to these people? And I was like, well, he's like, you can talk to anyone. And I said, okay, Ted, like, this is part of it. You gotta just like get out there and talk to them. He's like, well, what do I ask them? And I said, okay, just like come with me. We'll go talk to a few tables together. And well, I just asked the people, I'm like, how did you hear about this concert? Like, have you ever heard and see before? I mean, of course, there's like countless things you can ask them. And we, so we walked away. He's like, wow, like, you're just so good at doing that. And I said, but you're not bad at it. You just don't, like, you just haven't even like tried, or hasn't even occurred to you that like you need to connect with these people. And so then I saw him like going off on his own, talking to some people, and he was doing a good job. But that was like actually a very important lesson that that you can talk about it sort of like in a classroom situation. You'd be like, oh, you need to connect with your audience. That's a way to do it. But like really, you kind of have to have that experience that he had, just like going around to a few tables, talking to these people. And then, afterwards, I saw some of the people he'd talked to, like, came up and talked to him and thanked him. I mean, people were like ecstatic, because it was like there were no music stands. They actually chose to project the score like on to the two facing walls. And so like, and people just kind of walked around, the audience walked around, the players who could walked around. And it was really, I think the people who came were really just kind of excited about it. But, and then it's like, okay, well, fine, how do you take this experience of talking to these people at a concert and turn that into something entrepreneurial? Well, I mean, you get their information, you start inviting them to your own concerts. You develop a relationship. It's really like, that's what it's about. It's like entrepreneurialism is about like connections, and you just have to constantly be making them and doing it in a way that's not. You can do it in a way that's totally and completely genuine, and that's what people respond to.
Yeah. Not spammy.
I don't know. So I don't know if I'm making. Yeah, exactly. Not. So that's how we like to sort of show by doing. I think that's where when Eighth Blackbird is really kind of doing its best work, and even like when we're playing chamber music, or trying to like sort of teach chamber music to kids, the best thing is we end up putting one of each of us in a group with several students and doing a whole concert of like these side-by-side performances. And so coaching and teaching from within the actual ensemble is, I think, the most helpful for the kids in terms of learning, because they have the experience of doing it. And just like for Ted, it was like, he was like a totally, fish out of water in terms of like talking to a person he'd never talked to before, and doing that like sort of in tandem with me empowered him to realize that he could actually do it on his own.
Yeah, using your face hole to communicate with people is an underutilized skill, it seems like, among my students at least. We had our
very important.
It is. I mean, it's the beginning, and that should go along like an entrepreneurship class for musicians that could be one semester long. Teach like the basic principles of some graphic design, how to make smart choices using social media, how to write a decent letter to somebody, and how to speak to people in public without sounding like a gibbering idiot. I think you could cover that in a semester.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, and I think like that's the thing that we emphasize over and over when we go do these kinds of courses is like is making the connections with people. Like that's and not and like being nice. I know it sounds cheesy, but it's like this is a small community that we all operate within, and it just doesn't pay to sort of like
Yeah. It doesn't as much as it should get by on merit, it doesn't.
Right.
You're never going to ride into town on your cult of personality and use that to sell out a hall. It's through other kinds of connections.
Well, and you won't be just like, oh, I am the best, violinist since, name it.
Although
since Heifetz, and like, you should
all the
come to my concert just for that.
Yeah, right.
If
all
anybody could do it,
poster with like, oh, it's the best violinist. We need to go see that, right?
Right.
Right.
If anybody could do it, it would be 8th Blackbird, though.
Well, I don't.
Go ahead, Lisa.
You have a friend with us. Don't worry.
Okay.
Um,
Look, in the end, like I feel so lucky to be doing what I'm doing, but like the part of this whole like legacy work that I feel like is what we've been working on lately is just about, well, I'm not going to still be performing probably when I'm like 80 years old, so like, but that doesn't mean I don't. I mean, I don't know, maybe I will, but but like our desire is like, well, we've done, we've sort of. I feel like we've helped sort of pave the way, and we want to continue to help doing that, but we need the next generation to step up and do that too. So if we can help by mentoring, like that's how we want to kind of do it. And yeah, it's really fun. I find it very gratifying to work with young people, and yeah, just sort of see the fire in their eyes, and really try and guide them on whatever their own unique path is. It's not about just like making cookie cutter copies of what it is that you do. It's about helping to foster like what it is that the individual wants, whatever that is.
To me, it's sort of for a student who maybe grew up thinking that they were going to be a symphony musician or a film music composer, it might be a little scary, but it's also very exciting. Like, whoa, like think about before 8th Blackbird existed, somebody had to think, let's do this thing, and now it's this awesome thing that's been going on for years. You could be that person.
I think what's cool about the workshop is, as Lisa, you were describing it, is that you're going through and not just talking about these things, but expecting them to practice them and helping them figure out how to practice them. Mm-hmm. Because like the class that Sam was describing earlier would be a very valuable class if students actually had to do all of those things. But so many classes like that, even throughout the rest of our curriculum, we don't actually have students practice doing the thing, right?
Yeah.
Like even in a theory class, we teach them how to do this stuff, and we do it, but so rarely are you just thrown a piece and say, tell me something meaningful about it in theory class. And the same thing with this entrepreneurism class. Like, it's great to say, hey, here's how you do this thing, but until you actually do it and either fail or succeed or somewhere in between, which is the most likely, obviously, is the only way that it's going to be meaningful, and then you figure out how to go into the world and do the things that 8th Blackbird is doing. And I'm sure you guys had to just stumble and fail at the beginning when you were figuring it out on your own at the beginning as well. And you probably have lots of stories to share when you're working with students.
No.
Well, the amazing thing to me, I just realized, is that when 8th Blackbird was cranking up, you didn't have the internet to help you do it. at the
I
beginning.
know it was barely starting. That's true.
Not in any kind of meaningful way. You weren't like, trading code over the ARPANET or whatever the heck it is, That's actually crazy to think about. Thinking about life before the internet.
It was the new music news groups that they were in.
That's it. All 4 people that were on board that.
All thought new music.
All this talk about young performers and everything, I think we're getting ready to move on to the news, but I think we'll all agree one thing that all young students, if there's any listening out there, this is what you start with. When somebody says, fantastic performance to you as a composer or as a performer, you say, thank you very much. That's so kind. You don't go, oh, no, it was terrible. It could have been better. None of that. Accept compliments. That's
Every
the biggest
time I
thing.
overhear a student do that, I want to punch him in the face.
I know.
No.
That's the very beginning.
Not
of
punch
good
him in the face. Hit him
engagement.
with what is the thing? You hit him with the ruler? Is that what like the old timey school marm
Yes.
thing is? I want to say no, or like spray him with water like a cat.
Yes.
No.
Thank you very much.
Bad composer. Bad composer.
Right. Hit him on the nose with a rolled up newspaper. No.
Well, even though we're talking about all this new, the bleeding edge of new music and getting things done, there are still some people who are doing it the old-fashioned way. One of those is the first ever female winner of the, make sure I get this, Donatella Flick conducting competition put on by the London Symphony Orchestra. Their first ever female winner is
Chan is the woman's name, and we won't even hold it against her that she is a Wolverine.
Yes. I was gonna put that in.
She's 28 years old, PhD candidate at the University of Michigan, and she's the first woman to ever win this competition. She was one of 20 finalists. There was one other woman that was a finalist, and so it's great that this is happening. And I think that the headline on the WQXR blog got it just about right. They don't describe the glass ceiling as shattering by any means. They just say it cracked a little bit.
And if anybody wants some proof of this kind of thing, you should refer a couple of weeks back when we went over the big data parsing about female performers and conductors and what have you in the orchestra setting. Another good piece of news, actually, and this is a little bit of an older story. It was on the WQXR blog on October 21st. I didn't realize this. The Detroit Symphony has appointed Michelle Merrill as the new assistant conductor, replacing Teddy Abrams, who left to be the Louisville Symphony Orchestra music director. Yeah, so that's cool.
Great.
I had no idea. And I'm like the women's correspondent here at SoundNotion, and that's slipped
Which
past
tells
me.
you everything you need to know about how we have too many dudes at SoundNotion.
That's right.
I know. That's true.
It's just like when all the middle-aged dudes get together to talk about women's issues in Washington, right?
Right,
It's
yeah.
the War on Women coverage from Fox News.
Yeah, that's me. The Grammar Award has been,
more journalistically trained than most Fox News.
yeah, or at least I strive for a little more truth.
Sure. I feel it
The
in my gut, though, Sam.
University of Louisville's Grammar Award has been given out this year to Wolfgang. Is it Rim?
Ream.
I think it's
Ream?
Ream.
Ream.
Ream for
Wolfgang Ream.
Inschrift 2. We searched around, pretty confident there's not a recording yet available.
Well, yeah, there wouldn't be. I don't think so.
Yeah, these are usually pretty bleeding edge things that are winning Graumeier.
Yeah.
But if it got enough attention for Graumeier, we should probably expect a recording in the next few years.
That means somebody's heard it at some point, I would
Sure.
assume. And
From archival audio.
speaking of awards, these tend to be sometimes a little more face-palmy, sometimes good.
You got Grammy nominations.
The
Hey,
Grammy nominations.
Grammy noms.
noms.
And
We didn't
we
talk
were-
about these last week because we ran an old episode last week, but some interesting stuff. Best classical contemporary classical composition nominees are John Luther Adams for Become Ocean, Anna Klein, George Crumb, Stephen Paulus, and Roberto Sierra. So some interesting selections there. Interesting again that the Pulitzer winner is on the list again. Last year the Pulitzer winner won the Grammy as well, right? I don't
Was that the
maybe
case?
another year.
I think maybe.
Carolyn
Partita was the last one I could think of that won both of them. But
Yeah.
anyway, so that's interesting. Best orchestral performance, as usual, is mostly dead composers. But we do have one new recording of John Adams' City Noir, which I believe is for the full album, right, Patrick?
Yes.
Best orchestral performance.
Well, the album. Well,
because that City Noir
I believe
album
that the categories
also has the saxophone concerto.
That's correct. Yeah.
Ken McAllister. So this is the recording, which is chopped up live performances of St. Louis Symphony and David
St. Louis.
Robertson. So
Yeah.
that'll be fun.
Best chamber music performance, Hilary Hahn Encores, which is interesting. We talked about
Oh,
that
yeah.
project.
Yeah.
And then Dreams and Prayers, performed by David Krakauer, which, if you don't know that piece and you're into klezmer clarinet playing in even the slightest way, it is a delight to not be missed.
And I should mention that that is the
The prayer
premiere
part.
recording of the klezmer clarinet and string orchestra version of Dreams and
Okay.
Prayers for Isaac the Blind.
Yeah,
Nice.
I've got the Kronos Quartet with David Krakauer, and it is just fantastic.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah,
He
Man,
wails.
he controls that instrument like nobody's business.
It doesn't even sound like it's like. It's
When he
something
doesn't
else
want it to be,
entirely.
it doesn't sound like a clarinet. But the thing is, he could turn on a dime and start playing the Brahms E-flat Sonata, and it would sound beautiful as well.
And then also in that same category, I'm always delighted when I see Harry Partch show up in mainstream music lists like this. And so the other new music best chamber music performance nominee is Partch, Plectra, and Percussion, which was also nominated for best classical compendium. So hopefully there will be some people that say, I should listen to this Grammy-nominated thing, not knowing anything about Harry Partch, and will be blown away.
Yeah,
As
hopefully.
classical musicians, that is our goal, to always get people to say, I should... Exactly.
What is that thing? I should put that in my ear holes.
Exactly.
Yep. Sentimental favorite for best contemporary classical composition's got to be Stephen Paulus, and it would be cool to
Sure.
see a piece written for band win, which
That-
it would be cool.
Yeah.
You know, because that is such a. I mean, every college with a decent music program has a really good wind ensemble. You know, relatively speaking.
Right.
And almost no college has an orchestra that doesn't make you want to rip your ears off.
Right. I mean, lots of college
they're out
orchestras suffer in the intonation when it comes to the strings. And in their defense, you've only got to get 2 clarinets to play in tune together. You got to get like 16 violins. So yes, it's harder. But yeah, everybody has a pretty good wind ensemble. So I would love, like, for instance, 8th Blackbird playing a concerto for 8th Blackbird with a wind ensemble would be pretty awesome.
Ooh.
Yeah,
So-
we have talked about that many times, and it just hasn't happened yet. But.
There's a
Well,
budding
just-
commission. I can
You're-
smell it.
Yeah, the touring possibility. I mean, not that you guys have any trouble booking dates, but the touring
No, but-
possibilities seem
Yeah.
so much more expansive.
Mhm.
Especially
No,
now you're doing these workshop things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yep.
So it's settled.
It's settled. Yeah, it's settled.
It's
We
settled.
just solved so many problems for you. Like that's everything.
Yes, and
Sam's consulting fee will be billed later. You'll expect the invoice in the mail.
sometime between now and the time you turn 80 is our time frame for having this band piece concerto for 8th Blackbird. And I did the math, and we'll have you on SoundNotion like 1950 or so when you're 80 years old.
Perfect. Okay.
There we go.
I'll put that in my calendar. I've got something else at 9, as long as we can be done by 10:30, so I can get on the show at 11.
Yeah.
And let's say 9 so that we can all be there by 9:30.
Yes.
We're going to results by then. Just
Yes.
anyway.
And speaking again of musical awards, it's just an award show. Friend of the show, Ellen McSweeney, was given the Profile in Courage. Is that what it's called? Professionals of the Year. She's recognized by Music America 30, Profiles in Courage, as one of the Professionals of the Year, mainly in connection with 2 of her pieces that we talked about on the show, The Power List, Why Women Aren't Equals in New Music, and anywhere else for that matter. The deafening silence of the Beethoven music festival musicians, that one was very brave because it was sort of calling out the very heart of the gigging musician arena.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Give us our money,
that was a good.
or don't ask us to play.
Well, and that she should have
Thought
not
on-
asked the question when,
When
Yeah, just-
after-
like that was
yeah,
ridiculous.
right.
I'm sorry. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Lisa.
very.
Go ahead.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, I was just gonna say, right, exactly the same point. Like, that she was saying she would run into the problem of, not, the presenter saying, well, you shouldn't ask about what the fee is because, then it makes it look like all that's important is the money. But of course, we're all trying to make a living. Really, what happened with the Beethoven Festival was horrible. And it was, I liked her article because I thought it really pointed out, why is nobody talking about this? And, it's not okay what happened. And it does seem, which is not to say that I think, George LaPaz is a bad guy. I think he has every bit, the most positive intentions, and just kind of got in over his head. And it's not that he was trying to be a jerk by not paying people.
Sure.
But it still happened, and there were still a lot of people. It seemed very arbitrary, like kind of who got paid and who didn't, for the 2013 festival. It even happened in my group. Like I was paid right away. I don't know why, but then like half of my group wasn't paid. I think they weren't. I think some of them were never paid, and it's just sort of like everyone's trying to make a living, and we have people need money, and
Yes.
It's to say to somebody, don't ask what the fee is because that looks bad. That's terrible. It's just the worst.
To delve into the 90s, that's redonkulous. I think it deserves a redonkulous.
Well, and it's
yeah.
one of those things, like, there's, for reasons passing understanding, this taboo on talking about it, and so I'm sure the thing that's so great about that piece is, first of all, it's very well written. It doesn't get overly emotional. It just says this is what happened.
Right.
But second of all, it really pulls back the curtain on a thing that is happening to people all the time. And
Not just at the Beethoven
around
Festival.
the Beethoven Festival, like crappy things happen to people around getting paid for performing all the time, but this particular one was relatively high profile, and people weren't talking about it, and it seemed that there was some kind of taboo around people talking about it. And so that's why I think it was so important for Ellen to write that piece, and that it was so well written is part of what made it so impactful for a lot of people.
Yeah. I think it's worth mentioning some of my favorites of the others listed under this Musical America 30 Profiles in Courage are Stanford Thompson, the chairman of El Sistema USA. Now, didn't I hear something about El Sistema USA recently, how something just happened big, and I can't remember what it was? I don't remember. Well, El Sistema seems to work, and it's kind of cool to see it taking off here. And Aaron Dworkin, founder and president of the Sphinx organization, which is an organization that promotes diversity in classical music, which I'm a big fan of.
Which, how have we never had any Sphinx people on the show, because they are based in Detroit?
I know. We've mentioned it many times. Let's do it. I am on the email later today.
It's a New Year resolution.
Yes.
Exactly.
There you go.
And lastly but not least, there is a chance that something bearing the name City Opera will start doing operas again. I mean, it's not that surprising when you consider they were an organization that filed for bankruptcy. They're going through that process. Other people can swoop in when this kind of things happens, and if they get approval from the judge, they can buy it and get their resources and their name and all this stuff.
Yeah, they're restructuring. They're not liquidating.
Right. There's a group called NYCO Renaissance headed by Michael Capasso and Roy Niederhofer. Basically, they're using this organization to try and they've already raised $2.6 million in pledges. So obviously they're not just funding this entire thing out of some giant money bags of their own. They just have a strong interest in getting it up and running again. So it's still completely up in the air, but they've already raised quite a bit of money, and they've already got like a big gala celebration of the longtime music director whose name I can't see now. Maestro Julius Rudel. They have a gala planned in March, so we'll keep you informed on what's going on with that. But one of the more innovative and sort of fun opera companies might be back up and running. You never know.
Some wild stories from earlier this fall. Go back and listen to some of our stuff from earlier this year talking about City Opera, but they had a little bit of a roller coaster.
I did not think I would be talking about City Opera today, and I just ran across that story.
Nope.
Yes.
And Patrick, you got back on the call just in time to wrap up with us.
Hooray!
Yay!
Lisa, thank you so much for coming on and bearing with our technical issues at the beginning of the show. How can people keep up with you and follow you and Eighth Blackbird?
Oh yeah, just www.eighthblackbird.org. And thanks for having me again, guys. Nice to spend part of the Sunday morning with you all.
Yep, and we'll have a link to their calendar, which they have lots of events.
So many events.
When you do these residencies, you have some events that are open to the public?
Yeah, often that's the case, and I think we update that as we know about all those specific things.
Right. So they're all the way through the end of like May. It's date after date after date. So check to see when they're going to be in your area. You should really go see them if you haven't done so. Are there any other things big for Eighth Blackbird? Any recordings or anything coming up?
We have a few very cool things that I can't yet talk about, but you'll see. Yeah.
Well, this means you have to come on the show again and tell us about that.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
Yes.
Well, we will be following you in all those places that you mentioned, and we will have links to all those places as well in our show notes that Sam is putting together. Even as we speak, he is putting them together at soundnotion.tv/SN. So thank you to everyone who visits that site each week. You can follow us at Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all those places. If you want to suggest a story or a topic for the show, tweet us with #SNWeekly, and we check that out as we're putting the show together. Subscribe to us, and really, this is a really important thing to do as well. If you've made it this far into the podcast and are hearing me beg for things from you, go to iTunes. Even if you're not listening via iTunes, go to iTunes and rate and review the show, and that helps it surface for other people to find us. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so using our Amazon affiliate link with your Christmas Amazon shopping. Just do the little search thing for whatever you're buying on Amazon on our little search box, and we get a little commission. It doesn't cost you anything, but it helps us out a lot, and you can do that on our site. Again, that's soundnotion.tv. SoundNotion's introduction includes music by Patrick Gullo. Thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you back next week.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.